The weight of the unspoken.
You know, there's a particular kind of silence that settles in a bar like this one. It's not an empty silence. It's a heavy, liquid silence filled with the ghosts of 1,000 conversations and the weight of unspoken truths. It's the kind of silence I've become an expert in lately. My name is Leo, and this stool, right here at the end of the bar, has become my confessional. It all started about 3 months ago. A shift in the atmosphere of my own home. I can't wait. It was subtle at first. The scent of her perfume, Midnight Bloom, which used to be a scent reserved for our date nights, started appearing on weekdays. I'd come home from the architecture firm, expecting the familiar scent of lemon cleaner and the faint aroma of whatever she was cooking, and instead I'd get a wave of that intoxicating floral darkness. You're wearing your perfume, I'd say, trying to keep my tone light, casual.
Oh, I just felt like sprucing up a bit today. It's nice to feel pretty, even if I'm just running errands, isn't it?
And of course it was. But the excuses began to stack up like unread books on a shelf, threatening to topple over. Then came the phone. The device that was once an extension of her hand, constantly buzzing with messages from her friends or pictures of potential interior design ideas for our home, became a guarded fortress. It now lived screen down, and if it did ring, she'd smash it up with a hurried, "I'll be right back," disappearing into the bathroom or the garden. One evening, we were watching a movie, some romantic comedy she'd picked. Her phone lit up on the coffee table. The name Mark from yoga flashed on the screen. Her body went rigid beside me. She didn't answer, but her thumb flew across the screen, a frantic, silent message. "Everything okay?" I asked, my own heart starting to hammer a dull, painful rhythm against my ribs.
Yeah, fine. It's just the group chat for the class. They're trying to organize a weekend retreat, so annoying.
Mark from yoga. I'd met him once when I picked her up. A little too tan, a little too earnest with his perfect white smile. He taught vinyasa flow on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The days her errands seemed to take the longest. The evidence was all circumstantial. A perfume bottle slowly emptying, a new secretive smile she'd get when texting, a distance in her eyes when we talked, as if she was composing her next line instead of listening to me. I was an architect, a man who built his life on blueprints, calculations, and undeniable facts. And here I was, living in a house of cards built on whispers and suspicions. I started to lose myself. I'd drive past the yoga studio on Thursday afternoons. I never saw her car. Of course not. They'd be smarter than that. I'd check our shared phone bill, seeing the same number, Mark's number, I presumed, appearing over and over with call durations of 20, 30, 45 minutes. Confronting her was useless. I had already tried, once. The memory of it was like a fresh bruise that I couldn't stop pressing. It had been a Tuesday evening, I remember. The rain was streaking the kitchen window, and she was chopping vegetables for a salad with a methodical, precise rhythm that felt louder than any words. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, trying to find the right entry point, a crack in the wall of normalcy we had built. "Sophia," I'd begun, my voice softer than I intended, almost swallowed by the sound of the knife on the cutting board. "I feel like we've been so distant lately." The chopping didn't stop. "Is there something, maybe someone else?" That's when the knife stilled. The silence that followed was absolute, and then she turned, her face a masterpiece of wounded innocence. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Her eyes widened, not with shock, but with calculated, profound hurt. A tremor touched her lip, and tears welled up, shimmering but never quite falling, a perfectly controlled display. "How could you, Leo?" Her voice was a whisper, frayed with a pain that felt so real it was chilling. "After 10 years, I've been stressed with work, and you think the solution is to accuse me of cheating? Is that what you think of me?" She turned it all around on me with such masterful precision that I was left disoriented, the accuser becoming the accused. I ended up apologizing, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, feeling like a monster for doubting the woman I loved, for violating the sanctity of our home with my baseless suspicions. That was the night, the very same night, that I first came to this bar, the Oak Haven. I needed a place where the silence wasn't accusatory, a place where I could simply hold my thoughts without judging them. The bartender, an older man named Arthur, became my silent ally. His face was a roadmap of 1,000 listened-to stories, his eyes holding a quiet understanding that asked for nothing in return. He'd see me come in, take this very stool at the end of the bar, and without a word, he'd pour 2 fingers of a decent, amber-colored bourbon and slide it across the wood with a soft, definitive click. He ever pried. He never offered empty platitudes. He was just there, a steady presence in the shifting sands of my life, and in that consistency, I found a strange, fractured sense of peace. But tonight Tonight was different. The air itself felt charged, thick with a finality that I could taste. It was a Thursday, her yoga day. She had texted me a few hours earlier, a message that now felt like a relic from a past life. Girls' night with Clara, don't wait up, XOXO. The XOXO was the cruelest part, a pantomime of affection. I stared at my phone, the glow of the screen illuminating the darkening bar, and a cowardly, desperate idea took root. I found Clara's husband's number and made the call, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The conversation was brief, mundane. I asked about their son's school project, my voice straining to sound casual, and he, unsuspecting, offered the truth so freely. Oh, Claire's right here, elbow deep in glue and glitter with the kid. The knowledge didn't crash over me. It settled, a cold, heavy physical weight in the center of my chest, making it hard now. If there's no right to fight, it's not crying to be with me. I could feel it in my bones, a seismic shift in the reality I thought I knew. The not knowing had been a special kind of torture, a constant, gnawing anxiety. But this knowing, this absolute certainty without a single piece of concrete proof was a different kind of hell. It was a hollow, silent scream trapped in a vacuum of my own powerlessness. I must have been staring into the depths of my bourbon for a solid 20 minutes, watching the light from the shelf behind the bar fracture and dance in the amber liquid, seeing entire futures rise and fall in its swell. The ice had long since melted, diluting the whiskey into a pale, tasteless reminder of everything. I was so lost in the static of my own thoughts that I didn't notice the man slide onto the stool next to me until his voice, loud and abrasive, shattered the fragile silence I had built around myself.
Hey buddy, whiskey, the good stuff, and keep on coming. Just closed the biggest deal of my life, celebrating.
Arthur, with his practiced economy of motion, simply nodded, poured the drink, and as he slid it across, he gave me a slight, almost imperceptible roll of his eyes, a tiny gesture of solidarity in a world gone mad. I managed to summon a weak, twitching smile in return, a meaningless social reflex. The man, whose name I soon learned was Dave, was a talker. He didn't need a conversational partner, just a receptacle for his triumph. He launched into a monologue about his commission, the new car he was going to buy, a vacation to some tropical locale I couldn't picture. I nodded along, a hollow puppet, my mind 1,000 miles away, trapped in a hotel room I couldn't prove existed, watching a scene play out that I could visualize with devastating, painful clarity. You know what the secret is, pal? Dave slurred, suddenly leading into my space, his breath a mix of cheap whiskey and mint. The secret is knowing when to hold 'em and knowing when to fold 'em. He jabbed a finger at me for emphasis. I had this client, right? Nothing but problems. Demanding, nitpicky, a real piece of work. I was ready to walk away, write the whole thing off as a loss. But I saw this one little thing, this one little weakness in his argument, and I pivoted. He said the word with reverence. I changed my entire approach, stopped fighting his battles, and started playing my own game. And bam, deal closed. He clapped me on the back, a little too hard, the impact jarring me back into my body. I flinched, the bourbon sloshing dangerously in my glass. You look like a man who's holding a losing hand, my friend, Dave said. And for a moment his eyes cleared, the drunken haze parting to reveal a startling, uncomfortable perceptiveness. He saw it. He saw the entire crumbling edifice of my life right there on my face. His words, clumsy and drenched in alcohol, didn't just strike a chord, they detonated something inside me. A losing hand. The phrase echoed in the silent, hollow chambers of my mind. That's exactly what I had. A handful of suspicions, the perfume, the phone, the secretive smiles, the yoga retreats, but no aces, no king, no undeniable proof. I was sitting at a table betting my sanity, my peace, my very soul on a pair of twos, while she was playing with a full deck I didn't even know existed. I was trying to play a game of truth and lies by a set of rules that she had long since discarded. The detective was dead. The architect who needed blueprints and facts was lost. In that moment, something else had to be born. I paid my tab, leaving cash on the worn wood. I stood up, and the world tilted slightly. It wasn't the bourbon, it was the pivot. Dave's drunken, simplistic wisdom had given me a terrible, brilliant, and devastatingly clear idea. I wasn't going to play the detective anymore. I wasn't going to search for proof. I was going to change the game entirely. The goal was no longer to prove she was a liar. The goal was to stop caring about the lie. The goal was to build a new truth, one where her actions were irrelevant. I drove home through the rain-slick streets, my mind not racing but eerily profoundly calm. It was the calm of a decision made, of a path chosen, however painful. The house was dark and empty as shell. Sophia wasn't back yet. I didn't turn on the lights. I moved through the familiar spaces by memory and touch, a ghost in my own home. I went to my home office, the one room that was truly unequivocally mine, and closed the door. I didn't open my laptop to search for more evidence, to check her location, to scroll through old photos. No, I opened a blank document. The white screen glowed in the darkness, a pristine new beginning, and I started typing. I didn't write an accusation. No, I didn't write a list of her sins or a chronology of my suspicions. I wrote a love letter to myself, to the man I was before the doubt had poisoned the well of our marriage. I wrote about the small architecture firm I wanted to start, one that specialized in sustainable homes, buildings that breathed and lived in harmony with their environment. I wrote about the trip to Iceland I'd always wanted to take, to stand under the vast swirling tapestry of the northern lights and feel small in the face of something truly majestic. I wrote about the simple, unadulterated joy of Saturday morning pancakes, the smell of coffee filling the sun-drenched kitchen, without the heavy, unspoken silence hanging over us like a shroud. I wrote for what felt like both an instant and an eternity, the words a lifeline I was throwing to my own future. When I heard the key scratch in the lock, a little after midnight, I didn't minimize the document, I didn't close the laptop. I simply saved the file, I named it future_beginning, and left it open on the desktop, a white flag that was also a declaration of war. She crept in, trying to be quiet, a study in guilt. She smelled of the cold night air and the faint, clinging scent of an unfamiliar cigar smoke that clung to her coat, a scent that was not mine, a scent that marked the territory of another man. She saw me sitting there in the dark, a silhouette in my own chair, and she froze.
Leo, you scared me. What are you doing just sitting in the dark?
I didn't move. I just looked at her, at the vague outline of her face in the gloom, just thinking. I said, my voice steady, devoid of the anger or pain she must have expected. It was the voice of a man who had already crossed to the other side. About the future. The next morning, I acted with a clarity that felt foreign, yet empowering. The heartbroken husband was gone. In his place stood a project manager assessing a structural failure. I called Brenda, the no-nonsense realtor I'd partnered with on commercial projects. Brenda, Leo, I said, my voice even. I'm considering my options. I'd like a discrete market analysis on the house, as is. There was a brief, understanding pause on the other end. I'll have the comps for you by end of day, Leo. Next, I went to the bank. The fluorescent lights felt surgical. Moving half of our shared savings into a new private account wasn't an act of theft. It was an act of preservation, of securing the foundation for the new structure I had begun drafting in the dark. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I simply began building a new blueprint for my life, brick by logical brick, right beside the crumbling ruins of the old one. I left the realtor's card on my desk. I may have even left the new bank statement in the printer. It was no longer about secrecy. It was about transparency of a different kind, the transparency of my exit strategy. Sophia noticed, of course. The change in the atmosphere was palpable, more definitive than any argument. The confrontation, when it came days later, was entirely different from the first. There were no performative tears, no dramatic recriminations. She simply stood in the doorway of the living room, her face pale, the fear in her eyes cold and stark. The game was up and she knew it. You're leaving me, she said, her voice hollow. It wasn't a question. I looked at her, the woman I had built a decade of my life with, and I felt a profound, bone-deep sadness. But the anger, the desperate need for proof had burned out, leaving only ashes. I'm leaving this, I said, gesturing vaguely at the space between us, at the very air thick with deceit. This prison of lies. I don't have proof, Sophia. I don't need it anymore. My soul has already held the trial and it's passed a sentence of freedom, for me. She didn't deny it. She didn't say a word. Her shoulders just slumped in utter defeat. The fight was gone. She hadn't even realized I had stopped playing the game until she saw me walking away from the board. The divorce was quicker and less messy than I had ever anticipated. She was, I think, too ashamed to fight for much, the truth of her actions hanging between us like a specter that needed no name. She moved in with Mark from yoga almost immediately. I heard through the withered grapevine of mutual acquaintances that it lasted about 6 months. The thrill of the secret, it seems, isn't quite the same when it becomes the mundane reality of taking out the trash and arguing over bills. And me, well, I'm back at the Oak Haven, but the silence that greets me here now, it's of a different quality altogether. It's not a heavy liquid thing. No, it's a peaceful silence, a clean silence. It's the sound of a chapter closing, the final period on a long, difficult sentence. Arthur slides my bourbon over, the glass making a soft, familiar sound on the wood. He looks at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. It's his first real comment in all these months. "You look lighter," he says. I feel a real smile touch my lips, the first one that hasn't felt like a performance in years. "I feel it," I reply, and oh, the truth of it resonates deep in my bones. The door to the bar, it opens then, cutting a shaft of warm evening light through the dim interior. A woman walks in, glancing around with a slight uncertainty that feels familiar. She has such a kind, thoughtful face and a well-worn portfolio case slung over her shoulder. She takes a stool a few down from me, letting out a soft sigh.
Can video, please? Long day.
Arthur provides the drink with his customary efficiency. She catches me looking and offers a small, tired but genuine smile. I return it, the gesture feeling natural, unforced. "Tough day at the office?" I ask. She lets out a breath that's more laugh than sigh. "Client revisions," she says, rolling her shoulders. "I'm a graphic designer. Sometimes it feels like I spend more time convincing people that my designs are good than I do actually designing them, I know the feeling," I say, and I find myself leaning in slightly. I'm an architect, Believe me, I understand the struggle between vision and compromise. Her eyes light up with a spark of professional interest. "Really? That's a fortunate coincidence. I'm actually looking for someone to consult on a studio space I'm hoping to build in my backyard. Nothing huge, just a place where I can get messy with paints and ideas without taking over the dining room table." We talk for an hour, then two. The bar around us empties and fills with a quiet hum, but our little island of conversation remains. We talk about design principles and difficult clients, about the serene power of negative space, and the annoying perpetual battle against the use of Comic Sans. We talk about our dreams, hers for a thriving studio, mine for a firm that leaves a beautiful, sustainable mark on the world. Her name is Elena. Her laugh is genuine, a sound that comes from her core, and it doesn't feel like a performance or a weapon. It just is. I'm not rushing anything. The wounds are still there, faded to scars. But as I sit here, in this new peaceful silence of the bar, talking to a woman who looks me in the eye without a trace of a hidden agenda, I feel something I haven't felt in a long, long time. It's a faint, fragile tremor of possibility. I feel the first few tentative lines of a new blueprint being drawn, not in ink but in light. And for the first time, the future doesn't look like a mystery to be solved or a fortress to be defended. It looks like something to be built together. That conversation with Elena, right here in this very bar, well, that was the first thread, the foundational sketch of a new beginning for me. It was slow, deliberate, and built with the care of a master craftsman on a foundation of shared passions and We started as professional contacts, then became friends who challenged and inspired each other, and eventually, something deeper, something more resilient began to grow. She saw the early hesitant blueprints from my new firm, Corvus Designs, and offered to help with the branding, not out of pity, but because she genuinely believed in the vision. And I saw the passion in her eyes when she talked about her art, and I offered to design her backyard studio, not as a client, but as a partner, invested in seeing her dreams take physical form. Tonight, it just feels different. The air in the Oak Haven, it hums with a quiet joy, a joy I've truly earned, Arthur, he gives me this knowing smile. He's seen my whole transformation. And then Elena, when she enters, she moves with such confidence it just takes my breath away. Her simple blue dress, it matches the twilight sky, and that small box in her hand, oh, it makes my heart race.
For an architect, you're not very punctual.
I laugh easily. The Miller client wanted a bay window last minute.
And you said,
I told him the design was perfect as is. I say, leaning closer, and that my partner and I were celebrating. Elena, she slides the box to me, and inside rests a beautiful brass compass engraved with this bar's coordinates and our meeting date with one word, true. My throat, it tightens. This instrument, it points to what's real, but my true north, it's always been her. Reaching for the velvet box in my pocket, I meet her gaze. Elena, will you build a life with me? One with an honest foundation that will never ever crack?
yes, 1,000 times.
As the ring slides onto her finger, a perfect fit, the past finally releases its hold on me. Walking out hand in hand, I glance back at the stool, now just a stool. Its weight gone. My path is clear at last, my heart irrevocably home.